Please welcome back SATE co-chair Nathan Jones.
Awesome. Thanks, John. All right, here we go. Often understated, communication is frequently looked at as a byproduct of an effective business. However, as Paul and Paul will demonstrate, communication is a core tenet of any team, business unit, or group that share a common goal. Now, we've all played as kids the telephone game. You're in a large group and you whisper something to the person beside you. They whisper what they thought they heard to the person beside them. It gets to the very end and it's something wildly and fantastically different than the original person. Now imagine if that game was played and it was only two people doing that. And the communication between that two people was still wildly different. Now you think that might not happen. It actually does happen every single day. So here to demonstrate that, explain that, is Paul Osterhout and Paul Kent.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next presenters need no introduction, but they insisted on one anyway. Even though our two presenters have dozens of years in the entertainment industry and are well seasoned in speaking at SATE conferences all over the world, they decided to ask their colleagues for advice. One member replied, "There's a first time for everything, so try to be funny and brief." In fact, they were chosen to speak this afternoon due to their warm personalities. I looked up warm in the dictionary, and it means not so hot. So, please give a not so hot welcome to Paul Kent and Paul Osterhout.
Hi, I'm Paul Kent.
Hi, I'm Paul Osterhout, and I told you we should have not hired that guy to do the introduction.
Again, third time. So we're here today, really, to talk about communication, and specifically within a project team, and how communication can help bring projects and people together from a diverse group, and hopefully move forward with successful communication to complete a successful project.
I'm going to give you a gift, Paul. I'm going to tell you how to make $1 million without doing hardly any work.
Can I take £1 million? I think the exchange rate still works.
Yeah. I don't know. When will it be November 1st?
Okay.
Anyway. No, you can't leave.
Sorry, yeah.
Communication is a billion-dollar industry telling people how to talk to each other. All these books, if you've ever worked for a big company, you talk to a recruiter, I'm sure one of the questions they asked you was, how do you communicate? What's your communication style? If you ever worked for one of these big companies, you'll have yearly performance evaluations. You'll always be talked about or given an evaluation on how effectively you communicate. So write that book or go on a speaking tour, not like this one because we're not getting paid.
I was going to say, we're doing this for free.
This one's free, yes. So the question, Paul, is why don't we communicate? Engineers, creative people, what's the issue? What's the problem?
It's a good one. I think it's because we think differently, is the honest truth. Our brains work differently. We approach things differently. Yeah,
so that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how we think, how we process information, and then hopefully we'll understand a little bit better, give you some tools about how to communicate better. Okay, we're not going to talk about scamper techniques or Bloom's taxonomy or right brain, left brain. What we're going to talk about is convergent and divergent thinking, because that's typically how we can separate engineers talking and creative people talking. And by the way, we're using the term engineers and creative people. Don't take it literal. Engineer means those of you in the audience that are responsible for delivering the product. Okay? And we use the word creatives only to mean the people that are responsible for the ideation. So it's probably good half and half, I suppose. So how do we think differently?
Well, we have two ways of thinking, unbelievably. Convergent versus divergent thinking. So, I don't know what. You tell me how you'd problem solve.
All right. So I am a divergent thinker. A creative person, this is typically how we do it. We come up with a question in our mind and we have to get the solution. So how do we get the solution? Well, what we do is we think about all the ideas, all the other things that we've come across in our career. Oh yeah, I saw that at Disney. Oh yeah, that was over at SeaWorld. Oh, and so all of these ideas now come up. I'm trying to solve this problem, and it's like a ping pong ball that goes bing, 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 all these ideas, and I can say, I'll take a little bit of that one, a little bit of this one, and I'll mix it together, and this comes a new idea. That's really the basic way why brainstorming works, because I have all of my ideas, all of my experiences. I'm going to bring you in, and you have different experiences, and so together, that ping pong ball now is going to go a lot further, okay? This is also called creative or horizontal thinking in the psychology world. So, how do you think?
And in my world, jazz hands, because you just did that.
Did I?
The whole time.
I was applauding.
Yeah, okay. Convergent thinking, I think, is the way that engineers work as a whole. We like to take facts and give you a straight answer, an honest answer, a correct answer. No flakiness, the correct answer. Flakiness, yeah. Jazz hands. And this is called convergent thinking, using logic, being analytical and thinking along a linear path, working through each problem to get to the end. So we like to take facts and turn those into the answer. It takes a little longer. But yeah, I think that's probably the reason why we have a little trouble communicating, because that process does take longer. So
there's no solution? There's no way around it?
I think there is. I think there's a way of putting the two things together. And I've just realized we are actually on the wrong... I just happen to have that slide. Yeah, and we're on the opposite sides of the stage. But anyway, thinking outside the box, which could be a little more your side than an engineering side, perhaps. But maybe it's a merging of the two, and what we want to try and talk about is the language of the way that we bring these two together. So I think it's probably useful to talk about some tips.
Okay.
Have you got some?
Yeah. So here's some 5 ways to help communicate with an engineer. Over my decades of trying to talk with engineers, these are some tips that I've learned, okay?
Okay.
1, build sincere trust. I have to trust you to solve my problems, right?
Yeah.
So we have to build a sincere trust. And a lot of this stuff, by the way, is Office 101. Everybody should know these basic skills, okay? But it's important to be reminded of them. Sorry, I keep my back over here. Sorry. Include engineers in brainstorming sessions. I have seen so many projects die because the creative people couldn't figure out how to solve the problem. And so if you bring engineers into a brainstorming session earlier, you can get their ideas. They are tied into their communities, and so they're on the cutting edge of new technology. So bring engineers to brainstorming sessions, always. Listen, this is pretty simple too. And engineers can go on and on and on when you ask them a question. And it gets tiring. But they have something to say, and we have to listen, okay?
You do?
Yeah.
We
have to respect their time.
Yeah.
Respect their time. Everybody, especially engineers, are probably working on 5 or 6 different projects at the same time. All of those projects require some deep thought, and so, just respect their time. Lots of times creative people just like to sit around and BS, right? Engineers can't do that. I know this is all a shock to you.
It's just very different.
Okay.
Because it's truth.
And learn to speak their language. That doesn't mean necessarily that I have to know about moving electrons or anything like that, but
that's fascinating.
But there are some things that you say, or some language things that we'll talk about a little bit later, that I have to learn to speak with you. Okay?
Okay. And luckily, I've prepared a response to that.
All right.
5 useful tips to deal with communication with creatives. The first one is keep your conversations short. They have no long-time memory thing. They don't necessarily want to know about the nuts and bolts, or the gauge of the steel, or the size of the power supply. They just want to know, yeah, we can make your dream happen.
Yeah.
Don't make assumptions that the idea you've just spent a week working on to get there is actually what they want. There's two things. It comes back to communication again, and it's learning each other's language. Your idea of that end output as an engineer may not be the creative vision of the thing that's needed. And again, it's a two-way street, this. Trust the expertise. They've come up with this idea, this thing, that's really engaged you as a person that produces something. And you're fully behind it. So trust their expertise that their story's right. I was going to say flaky again at that point. But there is an end point to this. They've been through that whole journey path, the storytelling path that brings it up. So we go there. And yeah, part of that, embrace the ideas that they've come up with. Because without the creative path, we engineer stuff that never gets seen. And we don't have a job, actually, to be honest. We feed off each other. It's a symbiotic relationship. There's a good word. And avoid negativity. Paul and I have talked about this a lot. This process, the linear process of engineering, where we think about it and we want to give you a true and concise answer, may appear as a negative thing because you want to go away and think about it. And the instant answer that Paul wants is, yeah, we can make that happen. Whereas you want to go away and make sure you can make that happen in the best way for the creative brain.
Great. So communication, now we understand each other, right?
We're done. Thank you.
But except communication does not always mean comprehension.
That's true, American and English. Aluminum, really?
All right. Look.
I could go on. Schedule.
Look. The engineering people have certain phrases and sayings and that probably mean, they don't mean what you think they mean. The creative people do too.
They mean what they mean.
What's that?
Of course they mean what they mean.
Yeah.
They mean that to us. Yes, you're exactly right. Yeah.
We have phrases that we say that have separate meanings than just what the words put together we would expect them to mean. I have an example. Okay. So if I said to you, I'd like your input on this.
Oh, just what we all want to hear. It means you're going to sit back, relax, and listen to us talk about engineering.
Yeah, that's right. So we asked a bunch of our colleagues and peers to give us some examples of phrases and things that they say that may be miscommunicated. This one came up number one. If I'm going to come to you and say, Paul, I'd like your input on this, you know what that means, right?
Yeah.
Let's find out.
I'm looking for someone to take the fall for this project. You look like a sucker.
Wow.
Kelly, take it down a notch.
Okay.
You got one?
Yeah, I've got one.
All right. Maybe.
Because we do. A number of different approaches are being tried, just what you want to hear. We're working through to get to your goal.
It makes perfect sense.
It does.
Easy to follow.
Did you go out and ask somebody what this meant?
That's not what that means?
It is. It should be exactly the same, yeah?
We have no clue. We're trying things at random.
In a linear fashion.
Now, I did know that one.
Yeah.
That one I knew. All right, we're having fun now. All right, here we go. The design will be finalized in the next reporting period.
I'm glad this is being video because we've got a creative saying finalized.
So, but we do say that. We do say, we'll have it by Monday. You'll get it by the end of the week. We're always making some false promise.
No. To be fair, very, very rarely. Just maybe not in the time span that we need to engineer it, I guess.
We're optimistic.
Yeah.
So this one came up as well, that we say this a lot, but it means something different, okay? This is what it really means.
We haven't started this job yet. We've got to say something.
Yeah, that's probably true. We haven't started it yet. Thanks for reminding us. We'll get right on it.
Back. So this is good. Test results were extremely satisfying. We've done our due diligence, we've done our process, and our results are looking good for the project. What more do you want?
No, it sounds great.
How about a Dutchman speaking French?
Let's see.
Le fumée magique a resté sur le boîte. C'est incroyable.
But the results were good.
All right, I think I've got one last one for you. The entire concept will have to be abandoned. We hate to say that. We know everybody has put a lot of hard work into it, and sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yep. Have to admit that.
Yeah, the whole concept.
The whole concept was, yep.
The only person that understood this quit.
So that's what that means.
Oh, I'm so glad.
You got one?
Yeah,
one
yeah.
left? All right.
One more. The product has been thoroughly tested.
Ready to go.
Ready to go. Absolutely no problems. Let's ship it.
Just turn it on.
Turn it on when it gets there. It'll be great.
All right, let's see.
我们没有合适的测试设备，所以我们把设备运到现场，希望客户不要损坏了这些设备。
There we go. So it's our goal to actually do some teaching here today. Let's be a little serious for a minute, if we can, which I doubt. Okay. Over the years, I've learned a lot from engineers. And I think learning how engineers think, how engineers approach a problem, can be beneficial to creative people. We just learn how you guys do it, and then we can just follow. So here's some tips to the creative people here on how to think like an engineer to make your projects better. Reverse engineering. Engineers love to pull stuff apart and put it back together again. I mean, that's what they do for their hobbies. So think about your project. Think about taking your project apart and maybe putting it back together a little differently. Think about the way you've assembled a design team. Maybe you want to bring in some other people that you wouldn't think necessarily would work in this kind of environment. But if you break it a little bit, put it back together, sometimes you'll be very happy with the results. Oh, that's what I just said. Yeah. I didn't have to put the words up, I could just say them. So anyway, if you think like an engineer, you have the creative curiosity that an engineer has for the way things work. You could have the same creative curiosity for how your project is put together, okay? Okay. Building a better mousetrap. It would be sad if engineers stopped
you can say
coming up with new stuff all the time, right? They're always trying to do something better, trying to build a better mousetrap. And so in your process, the way you do your process, the way you structure your project, think about how you could change it. I always hate when people say, well, that's the way it's always been done, so that's the way we're going to do it, right? That's the antithesis of innovation, right? So think about building a better mousetrap. Seek better processes. Shake it up. Don't go with the notion that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because you don't know if it's broke until you start taking it apart and start looking at it. Don't be afraid of change. Embrace it. You know, what's the old saying? The only thing constant is change. So don't be afraid. And there, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Don't think like that. But use your creative process to look for new horizons. Okay? And then last, challenges are problems to solve. And the engineers, they love to problem solve. They go and they lock themselves in a little office for a while and just think. And so think about doing that in your own personal life as a creative person. Find some time, get away from everything, and just think about what you're working on. And just leave some time every day just for thinking time. Just think. And embrace failure, okay? Not every project is going to work. Not every idea is going to work. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. If you don't try, you'll never fail. And if you never fail, you'll never create something great. Okay, and so anyway, think like an engineer, your creative process. You'll find that solving problems becomes fun, right? I love puzzles. I do puzzles all the time because it allows me to solve problems. And it just, for me, it's a release, and it's a way that I can clear my mind, so don't be afraid. All right.
So, bit of a a riposte back. So over the years as well, working with creatives, I think there's a lot of pieces that we can take from them and help people be better engineers, produce a better product. One is to speak in emotions. Creative people talk very emotionally about things. So I'm going to be careful now. They want to know what the story is. What do we have here? Where's it going to? Where's it coming from? And where's it going to be? You know, and what's the outcome that we're trying to get to for this new piece of wonderful creativeness? Now, many of us, even though we work in the creative industry for far too long, haven't actually learned a lot of that language. That's the creative language. You should learn it and embrace it. A bit like Paul was saying, we sit down, we think about things, we think about the right thing. We should also sit down and think about why he's just said that thing. It may take a couple of days to work it out, but in the end, we'll get there. And it's trying to work out what the thing is behind and help drive that project forward, trying to use the same language so that when you present your piece of engineering, it follows the same language as the project and the creative idea behind it. So in your life, also leave room for creativity. Leave some space to not be following that maybe a linear path. Go off and do something else. And from the creatives, we're trying to say to get that inspiration into the team. In many projects, it's there. Sometimes it's not. And as Paul said, sometimes you may need to break it apart and bring it back. But it may just be as simple as getting the whole team together and talking about what you're going to do and working out how you manage that and keep things on track. Sorry.
English?
English American somewhere. But overall, as an engineer, try and capture your creative spirit. There we go. Every day, we're all creative. In the way somebody bags the groceries and gets all those odd-shaped things into a rectangular thing. There's whole game shows built on that. The trick is not to sit down and go, this is my creative hour. It's just to let it happen, but also not to forget about it after it's happened. And just let that spirit flow through. Because you never know when the spark will hit. Hopefully there's been some sparks flowing around here.
Yeah, so what we're all striving for is perfection, but we'll never get there. So what we need to do is just keep working on making things better all the time. And the Japanese have a saying for it called kaizen. Kaizen means always improving. And so that's what we're trying to do here.
We're trying to bring inclusivity to a project. Diverse groups of people, different languages, different ways of approaching something. Bring them all together as one team, because the output of a great team is better than the sum of the individuals.
Yep. And before we say goodbye, I wanted to thank the American Sign Language interpreters for being here today. Thank you very much. You've all been supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Thank you.
Thank you.